You step quietly onto the cracked stones of Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument on Earth, though tonight it feels less like a place for grand history and more like a dream you happened to wander into. The moonlight pools across the sandstone, soft silver bleeding into ancient carvings of dancers and battles, figures locked in motion for nearly 1,000 years. The air is heavy with the faint scent of lotus drifting from somewhere unseen, mixed with the mossy dampness of stone that has survived both time and jungle. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, comment where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slip deeper into the causeway, passing rows of stone balustrades shaped into nagas, serpents whose bodies coil into endless forms, their tails curling so smoothly you half expect them to twitch. Every step echoes lightly, a sound that doesn't seem to belong to you, but instead feels borrowed, as if the stones themselves grant permission for your presence. The galleries unfold in shadowed corridors, walls covered in bas-reliefs. You run your invisible attention across them, seeing armies marching with spears, celestial dancers swaying in impossible balance, and kings depicted larger than life. In one panel, the churning of the ocean of milk stretches across the wall, gods and demons pulling on the body of a giant serpent wound around a mountain, as if trying to spin the universe itself. The detail is astonishing, down to the flex of each carved muscle, and you wonder how hands working with only chisels could produce such subtlety. Researchers still argue that such carvings might have been painted originally, their colors long faded, yet no one can agree on what shades would have blanketed this stone sea. You pause near a doorway where warm air stirs unexpectedly, though you know the night should be still. It carries a dry, almost smoky note, like incense long burned away. For a moment, the scent clings, making you imagine rituals performed in torchlight, hundreds of monks chanting while their voices rolled along these corridors. Time stretches oddly here. Your sense of minutes softens until it feels as if centuries brush past in the span of a breath. Through another hall, the sandstone floor is polished smooth by countless feet that walked here before you. Yet tonight, your steps make no impression. You drift toward the central tower, rising high above the courtyards built to symbolize Mount Meru, the mythical center of the universe. Looking up, the silhouette of its lotus-shaped peak glows against the starry backdrop, as though suspended between the sky and earth. Bats flutter overhead, their wings slicing the silence with a faint, leathery whisper. The sound blends with the rustle of palm leaves beyond the walls, creating a soft rhythm, almost like breathing. For an instant, you imagine the temple itself inhaling and exhaling, its stones alive with memory. You recall the serpent balustrades at the entrance, and now their coiled bodies feel less like decoration and more like guardians, watching with patient eyes as centuries pass. You step inside the sanctuary where the air thickens and cools, the scent of dust sharper here. A faint glimmer of moonlight filters through high windows, tracing delicate lines across carvings of apsaras, celestial dancers who smile in mid-motion. Their lips curve with knowing amusement, as though aware of your invisible gaze. One corner of the chamber carries a dark stain that no one has explained. Perhaps candle smoke, perhaps water seepage, but the mark lingers like a memory embedded in stone. Researchers still argue whether such stains could be remnants of forgotten fires, accidental or ritualistic, yet the evidence remains elusive. Your hand brushes along a pillar, rough beneath the eye but smooth beneath your unseen touch, worn by centuries of contact. A sudden silence falls. The bats retreat, the leaves outside grow still, and even the air seems to hold its breath. Then, softly, a breeze slips through again, breaking the tension with a sigh. It feels like the temple exhaled in relief, returning you to calm wonder. You glance back at the entrance, where the moonlight strikes the floor in a perfect square, framing the doorway like a glowing threshold. For a fleeting moment, you think you see a figure pass, just a shadow sliding across the light, but it vanishes before you can dwell on it. Maybe it was only the wind shifting the leaves outside. Maybe, still, the image lingers in your mind as you turn toward another passage, letting the shadows guide you deeper into Angkor Wat. The temple stretches endlessly, corridors flowing into courtyards, courtyards into towers, each turn revealing another layer of history folded upon itself. And as you wander, the silence grows thicker, not oppressive, but soothing, like a blanket wrapped around your senses. Somewhere in the distance, water drips in slow rhythm, echoing off stone. You think of reservoirs and moats that once glimmered under sunlight, now reduced to scattered pools reflecting the moon. You wonder if those echoes might be pulling you toward them, drawing you out of the temple's core and into the greater network of hidden waters beneath the jungle canopy. And as the thought takes shape, you step forward, leaving behind the carved dancers and smiling guardians, letting the stones whisper their secrets into the night. You drift away from the towers of Angkor Wat, as if some invisible current carries you beyond its stone courtyards and out into the night. The jungle hums low in the distance, cicadas chirping in uneven rhythm, and the air shifts, warmer now, carrying a moist scent of earth and stagnant pools. Ahead, the ground softens under your steps until you realize you're walking not across carved stone, but on the edges of something else, ancient waterways that once ran with life. The great moats around Angkor Wat are impressive enough, but beyond them spreads a hidden maze of canals, dikes, and reservoirs, some still faintly visible in the moonlight. The Khmer Empire engineered these networks on a scale so vast that even satellites today still trace new outlines of their work. You pause and listen. The night air is thick with the trickle of unseen water, a sound that seems older than memory, as though these channels whisper about centuries when entire cities drank from them. A patch of ground crumbles lightly beneath your invisible step, exposing fragments of brick. You peer closer, realizing you're standing at the edge of an ancient beret, a vast reservoir. West Beret, the largest, once stretched over 5 miles in length, holding enough water to shimmer like an inland sea. The moonlight bends across the faint depression of the land, making the earth look rippled, as though waves still lap unseen beneath the soil. Researchers still argue whether these berets served primarily for agriculture, ritual, or both. Each explanation fits neatly, yet none captures the full mystery of such monumental effort. A sudden rustle moves through the grass at your side. The sound is sharp and quick, and then gone. You hold your breath, though no one can see you, and in the silence that follows, you notice something stranger. The air itself feels heavier here, as if the humidity carries not just water, but memory. You imagine monks and engineers standing along these embankments, directing laborers in rows, their torches flickering orange against the night. You picture the sound of wooden sluices opening, water rushing in, the splash against stone as entire fields came alive with a single command. Tonight, though, the only splash is from a lone frog somewhere nearby, its croak echoing across the emptiness like an accidental performance. You slip further along a canal, its edges lined with collapsed laterite blocks. Moss crawls across their rough surfaces, the smell earthy and sharp, like wet clay left in the sun. The path bends, leading you to a smaller pond, still holding water. Its surface gleams under the stars, almost mirror-like. You lean closer and notice ripples spreading in slow circles, though nothing disturbs the surface. For a moment, you think of the apsaras you saw carved in Angkor Wat, their smiles caught in dance, and wonder if their steps ripple here too. Beneath the reflection, faint shadows twist. At first, they seem like branches, but they form straighter, sharper lines, as though structures rest just below the water's skin. It could be fallen walls or an ancient platform submerged long ago. Researchers still argue about how many hidden temples may lie beneath Angkor's flooded earthworks, their outlines blurred by centuries of silt. A sudden silence falls again, the frogs quiet, the cicadas muted. You're left with nothing but the sound of your own breath, though even that feels borrowed. Then, from the far side of the pond, a thin breeze stirs, bending the grass and ruffling the water. The ripples spread wider, scattering the strange shapes beneath, until all that remains is silver light dancing across the surface. Whatever you saw, it has faded back into mystery. You walk onward, drifting along another channel. The night grows cooler here, the scent shifting again, less earthy, more metallic, almost like rusted iron. You pass a mound where the earth rises unnaturally high, perhaps a forgotten dike or collapsed wall. Vines clutch the surface like fingers, their roots digging deep. As you brush by, one vine sways with no wind to move it, curling faintly toward the canal. Time blurs again. One moment, you're near the edge of a reservoir. The next, you're standing at a causeway that seems to stretch forever, lined with ghostly outlines of statues long broken. You feel both grounded and unmoored, as if the canals themselves carry you through centuries with each step. The sound of dripping water returns, but this time it feels closer, echoing in rhythm, as though guiding you deeper. Your mind drifts back to the incense-like scent from Angkor Wat, the faint smoke that lingered in the corridors. Here, too, you notice an unexpected trace, this time the sharp sweetness of lotus. The flowers once filled these reservoirs, their blooms drifting across the surface in dazzling pink and white. Even now, though you see none, the fragrance lingers, soft and undeniable. Perhaps it's memory, perhaps imagination, but it wraps around you like a gentle veil, slowing your pace, calming your breath. Yet a question remains. If these waterways were so vast, so carefully planned, why did they fail? The Khmer Empire collapsed, the channels silted, and the berets dried. Researchers still argue whether drought, war, or sheer overextension of resources doomed the system. No single answer feels final. You stand on the edge of a forgotten reservoir, listening to the silence, and realize the mystery may never resolve. As you step away, the surface of the pond catches the moonlight one last time. For a heartbeat, it glows too brightly, almost as if illuminated from within. Then the light shifts, the glow fades, and only the stars remain above. You drift forward, leaving the hidden hydraulic maze behind, yet you sense it still runs beneath your path, unseen and waiting, veins of stone and water threading through the jungle's dark heart. You step deeper into the ruins as the waterways fade behind you, the sound of water giving way to the muffled hush of jungle night. A faint stone path emerges, uneven and cracked, leading you toward towers that seem to rise suddenly from the canopy. As you approach, the air changes, thicker, almost warm against your skin, carrying the smell of damp stone mixed with faint traces of resin, like torches long since extinguished. Ahead, countless faces appear in the dark, carved in stone, serene and unblinking. The Bayon stands before you, its towers rising in strange symmetry, each capped with 4 faces that gaze in every direction. They are not small carvings, but massive visages, serene yet slightly amused, like guardians who know more than they reveal. You tilt your head back, and dozens of them meet your invisible eyes all at once. It's unsettling and soothing at the same time, as though every angle of the temple is aware of you, yet still welcomes you. You drift closer to one of the faces, noticing the deep curve of its lips. The smile is faint, just enough to suggest mischief. Some say these faces depict Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. Others argue they represent King Jayavarman VII himself, immortalized across stone. Researchers still argue whether the resemblance to the king is intentional or whether the sculptures were meant as more symbolic guardians. Either way, the result is overwhelming. Everywhere you look, a calm face returns your gaze. The corridors are narrower here, the walls pressing in with bas-reliefs that tell endless stories. Warriors charge on elephants, celestial beings float in clouds, and ordinary villagers plow rice fields, captured forever in patient chisels. The smell of dust lingers strong, mixed with the faint metallic tang of lichen-covered stone. You brush against one wall, and a patch of rough moss crumbles under your touch, releasing an earthy scent that clings to your skin. You step into a small chamber where moonlight filters through a broken roof. Here, the air is cooler, stirred by a draft that feels strangely deliberate, as though guided by unseen hands. A single face looks down from high above, framed perfectly in the square of open sky. For a moment, you feel as if you are being measured, weighed quietly against centuries of visitors who stood here before. A faint sound breaks the silence, low, almost like chanting, though no voices are present. It echoes between the towers, a murmur caught in the stone itself. You listen closely, the rhythm rising and falling like waves. It might just be the wind threading through the gaps, but it's so steady, so patterned, that you can't shake the thought of monks chanting in the darkness, their voices trapped and replayed endlessly by the architecture. Time slips oddly again. The moon seems higher now, though you don't recall it moving. Shadows stretch across the courtyard, falling from one smiling tower to another, their shapes merging like living silhouettes. The carved faces appear to lean closer, their lips curved just slightly more than before, as if responding to the passage of time itself. You blink, and everything is still again. Perhaps it was only your imagination. You wander into another gallery, your steps echoing hollowly against the stone floor. Here, the carvings depict naval battles, boats crowded with warriors, their oars cutting through water that now only exists in stone. You notice one detail that feels almost too sharp. A small figure etched into the corner, not a soldier, but a child clutching what might be a toy. Why a sculptor would place such a detail there, hidden in the chaos of battle, is unknown. Researchers still argue about these subtle inclusions. Some claim they're simply artistic whim, others that they carry symbolic meaning. The air grows warmer again as you pass beneath another tower. A bat screeches above, breaking the calm for a moment, and then silence falls thicker than before. You look up and see the dark wings vanish into shadow, yet the faces carved high on the tower remain perfectly lit by moonlight, as if unaffected by the shifting night. Their gaze follows, not with malice, but with something like patience, as though they've been waiting for you. You pause, sensing a weight in the air. The chanting-like sound stirs again, this time lower, more distant. You strain to catch it, but just as suddenly as it began, it fades into nothing. In the silence that follows, you hear only your own steps, too soft to disturb the stillness. On the edge of the complex, you find a stone doorway leaning slightly, its lintel cracked, but still balanced. Passing through, you step into a courtyard where dozens of faces surround you at once. They rise from every angle, north, south, east, west, staring calmly as though they have been waiting to share a secret. You hold still, almost expecting one of them to move, but the stone remains unbroken, the lips unmoving, and yet, as you turn away, you could swear the expression of one face shifts ever so slightly, a curve of the mouth deeper than before, a smile that holds the faintest glimmer of knowledge meant only for you. You blink again, but the expression returns to stone, and the mystery lingers, unresolved. You leave the Bayon behind, its many eyes still watching from the shadows. As you drift onward, you sense those serene smiles stay with you, hidden in the back of your thoughts, following as softly as your own breath. You leave the smiling towers behind, their watchful calm dissolving into the night as the path bends deeper into the jungle. The air thickens, warmer now, carrying a musky blend of soil and crushed leaves. Soon, the ruins of Ta Prohm rise from the darkness, half swallowed by nature, half defiant in their crumbling dignity. Here, the stone does not stand alone. The jungle has grown into it, over it, and through it, as though the temple and trees struck a silent bargain long ago. The first thing you notice are the roots. Giant silk cotton and strangler fig trees drape themselves across walls and doorways, their roots cascading like frozen waterfalls of wood. You step closer to one doorway almost entirely engulfed by a root system, the stone lintel barely visible under the twisted embrace. The scent of damp bark and moss rises sharply, mixing with the faint mineral tang of aged stone. You lean in, and the texture is uncanny, smooth where countless hands once touched, rough where bark grips hard against the walls. Moonlight filters through broken roofs, spilling silver beams across piles of rubble. You drift into a hall where slabs of sandstone have collapsed in jagged angles, forming natural stairways upward. Vines dangle from the gaps above, swaying gently, though no breeze stirs. You pause, noticing the sound of leaves brushing together, a faint whispering that grows louder the longer you listen. It almost forms words, though never clear enough to catch. You remember the chanting hum you heard back at Bayon, and for a moment you wonder if the whispers here are part of the same echo, fragments of memory woven into stone and wood. Researchers still argue whether Ta Prom's dramatic entanglement with nature happened naturally after abandonment or was subtly encouraged, a kind of spiritual merging of temple and forest. Either way, the result is mesmerizing. Stepping deeper, you pass by a carving half hidden under roots. It depicts a celestial dancer, her smile faint beneath the wooden embrace. The root coils just above her face, almost like a hand protecting her from view. You can't shake the feeling that the forest chose to cover this particular image, not by accident, but by intention. The air cools as you enter another chamber where a massive tree grows directly through the roof. Its trunk rises like a pillar of pale gray, splitting the hall in two. You imagine how sunlight must pour down here during the day, turning the chamber into a glowing atrium. Now, in the night, the moonlight catches on the smooth bark, giving it the appearance of polished marble. Shadows stretch across the cracked floor, their shapes twisting with every subtle sway of branches above. A sudden silence grips the hall. Even the insects outside seem to stop. Then, faintly, you hear a single thud, like something falling softly onto stone. You turn, scanning the floor. Only a loose fig rests there, rolled against a crack. The silence lingers, heavier than before, until the usual chorus of the jungle returns, as though nothing had happened. You move toward a doorway where air drifts cooler, almost refreshing. The scent of water filters in, damp and sharp. Stepping through, you find yourself in a small courtyard where a pool lies half filled, its surface covered with floating leaves. The reflection shows broken walls, branches curling down, and the faint glow of stars peeking through. As you gaze, a ripple spreads across the water, though no leaf falls and no breeze stirs. The ripple widens, breaking the star's reflection until it shatters into a dozen fragments. Researchers still argue about the hidden details of Ta Prom. One carving, often pointed out by visitors, resembles a stegosaurus, its spiked back unmistakable, though carved centuries before such creatures were studied. Some dismiss it as coincidence, others as proof of ancient memory or myth. You search the walls, though in this light the figures blur into abstract shapes. Still, you wonder if something waits in the carvings that hasn't yet been noticed, something only visible in the right shadow or reflection. The roots thicken as you move further, their forms more like muscles than wood. You pass through a narrow hall where they twist above you, forming an archway. It feels ceremonial, like walking through the clasped hands of giants. The smell here is sharp with sap, and the air feels humid, almost sticky against your skin. Time slows as you step beneath, the silence stretching until each sound, your step, the creak of roots, the drip of unseen water, feels magnified. Then, just as you pass under, a breeze breaks through, light and playful, stirring the vines overhead. The spell lifts, and the hall feels like nothing more than ruins again. Still, the memory of that hushed stillness lingers in your chest. Emerging into the open, You glance back at Ta Prohm. The trees loom taller now, their roots gripping tighter, as though refusing to let go. You think of Angkor Wat's polished corridors, Bayan's smiling faces, and now Ta Prohm's entwined embrace. Each has left a different impression. Order, watchfulness, and now a merging of stone and living wood. Yet, as you step away, one detail clings stubbornly to your mind, the ripple in the courtyard pool. You never saw what caused it. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps something still stirs in the silence between roots and stone, content to remain unseen. The jungle path widens again, though uneven stones press up through the earth as if the ground itself remembers. The night deepens, and the stars sharpen against the black sky. Soon, the final sight emerges before you, Preah Khan, the sacred sword. It is quieter here, less known to visitors, yet no less immense. What rises in front of you feels like a labyrinth carved from both faith and strategy, a place that once carried not only worship, but also the weight of power. The outer walls stretch long and straight, scarred but enduring. Vines creep across them in delicate lace patterns, their roots thinner here, less aggressive than at Ta Prohm, as though the jungle respects this place's silence. Passing through the first gate, you sense the structure's scale, endless corridors, pillared galleries, and hidden courtyards unfolding in all directions. Unlike Angkor Wat's grandeur or Bayan's intimacy, Preah Khan feels like a city within walls, its stones bearing whispers of both prayer and battle. You pause at the first Gopura, the ceremonial gate, where carved guardians still stand, though their faces are worn smooth. One statue leans slightly forward, as if bowing in greeting. The air carries a cool mineral scent, heavier than before, like water trapped in stone. Your steps echo faintly, swallowed by the sheer length of the passage. Inside, the layout grows confusing. Corridors run parallel and cross one another, each lined with pillars cracked but upright. You walk slowly, trailing your hand across the sandstone. The texture changes, smooth where human touch lingered, sharp where time has broken edges. The scent of dust and aged stone grows thicker, mixing with the faint sweetness of nearby blossoms carried in on the wind. Here, history takes on layers. Scholars believe Preah Khan was once both a temple and a university, its halls alive with monks, scribes, and teachers. Yet it also served as a military hub, guarding Angkor from invasions. The duality is everywhere. In the carvings of serene deities beside panels depicting warriors, in the vast halls that feel both sacred and tactical. You step into a courtyard where the moonlight pours unhindered. The stones here are scattered, forming uneven paths between fallen columns. In the center lies a broken pedestal, its top shattered. Once it may have held a sacred image or relic, now lost to time. The air is still, but your ears catch a faint hum, low, steady, almost like the vibration of a string. You tilt your head, listening. The sound doesn't fade. It seems to come from the stones themselves, as though the ground hums with memory. The further you go, the more the corridors feel alive. Shadows stretch in unusual ways, sometimes longer, sometimes bending as though reluctant to follow the expected lines of light. You turn into a narrow gallery, its walls lined with carvings so detailed they seem freshly cut. One panel shows a procession of figures, each carrying objects, offerings, scrolls, weapons. Their eyes, though eroded, seem fixed ahead, as if continuing their march long after time should have stopped them. Halfway through the gallery, the air cools abruptly. The scent of damp earth rises, though you see no water. Then you notice it, an opening in the floor where stone slabs have collapsed, revealing a chamber below. You lean closer. The darkness feels deeper than expected, a void rather than a space. The faint hum grows louder near the opening, vibrating softly against your bones. You step back instinctively, the sensation lingering in your chest long after you turn away. Another courtyard reveals a tree standing solitary, smaller than the giants of Taprom, but striking nonetheless. Its roots have pierced through the pavement, curling tightly around a set of stairs. You descend carefully, each step echoing. At the base, you find a chamber that smells strongly of incense, though no trace of it burns. The walls are smooth, with faint patterns of lotus flowers. A single stone altar sits at the center, its top worn concave, as if countless offerings once rested there. You imagine monks kneeling, their chants rising, their voices weaving into the stone. The air here feels thicker, heavier, as though holding memory close. As you rise again, the corridors begin to blur. You turn left, then right, and find yourself looping back to places you thought you had passed long ago. Preah Khan's labyrinth refuses to be mapped by simple logic. It is said the temple once housed thousands, monks, dancers, guards, teachers. Walking its paths at night, you feel the echo of their presence, like footsteps just beyond the next turn. Finally, you emerge into the northern wing. The galleries here are partially collapsed, their roofs open to the stars. The air is fresher, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers. A light breeze passes, brushing the vines so that they sway softly, their shadows rippling across the walls. You stand still, letting the night settle. The hum has faded, but your ears hold its memory, a vibration you cannot shake. Looking back at the ruins, you realize each temple, Angkor Wat, Bayon, Taprom, and now Preah Khan, has offered not just architecture, but atmosphere. Each carried its own voice, its own rhythm. Here, in Preah Khan, the rhythm is layered, complex, both sacred and strategic, serene and watchful. You take one last step forward, the jungle path stretching again into darkness. The temples fade behind you, leaving only the sense of stone and earth, the sound of your footsteps, and the lingering hum of memory pressed into the silence of the night. The path grows softer beneath your feet, less stone and more soil, as if the ruins themselves have stepped aside to let the forest lead. The trees here seem taller, their canopies thick enough to hide the stars, yet a faint silver light still filters through, guiding your steps. The air cools further, carrying a freshness touched with salt, and you realize the night is drawing you toward water. The silence breaks, soft waves lapping, a steady rhythm, a sound that feels eternal. When you emerge from the cover of trees, the world opens. Before you stretches the Aegean Sea, moonlit and calm, its surface gleaming like liquid glass. And there, set against the shoreline, stand the remains of the Temple of Poseidon at Cape Sunayon. Its white marble columns rise stark and tall, their edges glowing pale in the night. Though broken, they still command the cliff, gazing out endlessly over the horizon. You step closer. The ground crunches beneath you, pebbles and fragments of marble scattered like forgotten offerings. The scent here is sharp and clean, sea spray mixing with the mineral tang of weathered stone. Each breath feels colder, yet bracing, as if the air itself carries the memory of storms. Standing among the columns, you notice how the temple's shape plays tricks in the moonlight. What looks like a straight line of pillars bends ever so slightly, an architectural illusion meant to correct the eye. Ancient builders had anticipated human perception, shaping the temple not only for strength, but for beauty. Researchers still argue whether such perfection was purely aesthetic or whether it carried some deeper symbolic meaning, a language of stone now partly lost. A breeze sweeps through the columns, whistling low, almost like a voice speaking in half tones. You pause, listening, and for a moment it seems as though the sea itself responds, waves breaking against the cliffs in careful rhythm. Legends say sailors would spot this temple from far away, its gleaming marble guiding them home, a lighthouse of faith rather than fire. You picture weary crews lifting their eyes to these very stones, finding reassurance before reaching shore. The night deepens. You walk between the pillars, trailing your hand across their rough surfaces. Unlike Angkor's sandstone, the marble here is cool, almost icy. Tiny grains cling to your skin, as if reluctant to let you go. You tilt your head back, staring at the fragments of the roofline that remain. Against the star field, the columns look less like ruins and more like a gateway, a frame through which time itself passes. You pause at one broken base where the column has fallen. The stone lies massive and unyielding, yet weather has etched delicate grooves across its surface, as if the sea air has been patiently sketching for centuries. You crouch down, running your fingers across those lines. They feel almost deliberate, like a pattern or script, though your mind knows it is only erosion. Still, the thought lingers. What if nature has been carving its own story here, parallel to humanity's? A sudden shift in the breeze chills your neck. You glance sideways and catch a flicker of movement near the far corner, a shadow slipping past one column into another. You blink, but the space stands empty, pale marble glowing silently in the moonlight. The tension fades into curiosity, and you smile faintly, as if the temple itself has decided to remind you that myths were never fully separate from reality. At the edge of the cliff, the view opens wide. The sea stretches endless, silver waves rolling gently toward unseen shores. Somewhere out there, legend holds, King Aegeus leapt into the water in despair, giving the sea its name. The tragedy hovers in the air, not sharp, but soft and lingering, like the last echo of a story repeated too many times. You lean on the stone, the chill grounding you, as if anchoring your presence in both myth and memory. Looking back at the temple, you notice a small carving etched low into one of the columns. Not grand, not part of the original design, just initials scratched deep, rough, and modern. It belongs not to ancient priests or kings, but to a traveler centuries later. And somehow, that simple mark carries weight. It reminds you that these stones have always drawn people close, inviting them to leave traces, deliberate or accidental. Perhaps even you, though unseen, are leaving a mark in the way the air shifts as you pass. The moon climbs higher. The temple glows brighter. For a moment, time feels strange again, like the sea has stopped, like the waves hold their breath. The world seems to pause around the marble pillars. Then the rhythm returns, steady and calming, carrying you back into motion. You turn away slowly, letting the sound of the sea guide you down the slope. Behind you, the temple of Poseidon holds its vigil, unmoving, eternal. Ahead, the path narrows once again, swallowed by the night, ready to carry you further into ruins that wait in silence, each guarding its own secrets. The path ahead feels uneven beneath your steps, a scatter of stones half buried in the soil, as though you're walking over the ribs of something long forgotten. The air grows warmer here, touched with a faint dryness that hints at inland winds. You keep moving, guided less by sound and more by a pull, until the trees thin and the ground rises. And there, emerging like a mirage against the night, you see the remains of the palace of Knossos on Crete. The ruins spread wide, a maze of walls and foundations glowing pale under moonlight. Unlike the towering verticality of temples you've passed before, Knossos feels like an endless horizontal labyrinth. Corridors crisscross, stairways climb nowhere, platforms hover in silence. Even in ruin, the palace holds the sensation of motion, like a board game still waiting for its players. You step quietly into the complex. The stones beneath your feet are smoother than expected, polished by thousands of years of footsteps. The air is thick with dust and faint hints of time carried from the hills beyond. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, its sound echoing through hollow corridors like a warning. The moonlight reveals painted fragments clinging stubbornly to the walls, reds, blues, ochres, frescoes that once covered the palace in color. You lean closer to one faded image. A bull, its body curved with power, dominates the frame, while a human figure flips gracefully over its horns. The famous bull-leaping ritual. Researchers still argue whether it was a ceremonial sport, a religious rite, or a metaphor for something deeper. The truth remains locked in pigment and plaster. You wander deeper. Corridors split, twist, and merge again until you lose all sense of direction. This is the labyrinth in every sense of the word. Legends tell of the Minotaur, a beast born of curse and shadow, imprisoned in winding halls, King Minos himself. And here you are, tracing steps along that very myth, unseen, but not entirely unwatched. For a moment, the silence thickens, as though the walls lean closer, eager to hear your next move. The floor creaks beneath you, odd since it is stone. You glance down. Some slabs are newer, placed during early excavations. Others sag, their edges chipped as though holding back a weight below. You crouch, pressing your palm to the stone, and the coolness radiates into your skin. The sensation stretches longer than it should, like the chill is not just temperature, but time itself bleeding upward. At the heart of the ruins, you stumble into what archaeologists believe was the throne room. The walls here rise higher, their plaster smoother, and there, centered and small, sits a stone seat with carved arms. It looks almost ordinary, almost underwhelming compared to grander thrones in history. Yet this one has a quiet gravity, as if it remembers those who sat here. The air grows warmer. You smell something faintly metallic, mixed with dust. Perhaps it is only stone, perhaps rust from ancient fittings, but it lingers sharp on your tongue. You step closer to the throne. Its surface is pitted, scarred with time, yet its shape holds. Was this the seat of a king or of a priestess? Researchers still argue that too. Some claim the Minoans may have been a society where women held unusual authority. If so, perhaps this throne once belonged not to Minos, but to a queen whose name never survived. The silence deepens. You hear faint dripping somewhere beyond the walls, water moving underground. The palace sits above a network of storerooms and channels, a reminder that beneath its myths, it was also practical, a hub of trade and storage. You imagine jars of olive oil, honey, and wine stacked in rows, their scents mingling in the warm dark. If you listen carefully, you can almost smell the sweetness of fermented grapes, though nothing remains. The labyrinth tugs at you again, leading you outward. The halls seem to shift in the moonlight, shadows lengthening across passages that should remain straight. You step lightly, reminding yourself that the Minotaur was myth. And yet, what is myth but a shadow cast by something real? A faint scuff behind you makes you pause. You turn, but the corridor stands empty, only the long shadow of a broken wall stretching thin. You laugh softly under your breath, though it sounds smaller in the space. You wouldn't believe the stories these halls could tell if they spoke, you think, echoing a line from earlier nights. Perhaps they already are speaking, just in ways too slow for you to hear. At the edge of the palace, the air shifts again. The scent of time returns, sweeter now, blending with the salt drifting up from the distant sea. You pause on a crumbling staircase that once led to an upper floor. From here, the ruins spread around you like a puzzle, pieces missing but still recognizable. Moonlight paints every wall silver. One detail holds your attention, a carving faintly etched into stone, partly hidden beneath moss. It is not a bull nor a human, but a spiral, delicate, deliberate, looping inward as if drawing the eye toward its center. You lean closer, tracing its curve with your fingertip. The spiral seems to twist subtly, as though it moves under your hand, though of course it does not. Still, the question lingers. Was this a decorative flourish, or a symbol of something deeper, something still waiting to be understood? You rise slowly, stepping back. The palace looms behind you, endless corridors whispering with myths of monsters, gods, and forgotten rulers. You walk onward, your path dissolving again into shadow, the labyrinth shrinking into silence as though it never wished to be solved. The night air changes once again, turning warmer, almost fragrant, as though it carries the faint perfume of blossoms hidden in the dark. You step forward, and the soil beneath your feet grows softer, almost velvety, until the forest parts and a temple emerges that feels unlike any you've seen before. Small, delicate, glowing faintly red under the moon. This is Bantiai Srei, the citadel of women, carved from pink sandstone so fine it seems alive under starlight. The walls here do not rise as high as Angkor Wat or even Taprom. Instead, they stand close, intimate, as though inviting you nearer. The carvings are impossibly intricate. Delicate scrolls, dancing figures, and floral designs etched so finely you half expect them to shift under your gaze. You trail your fingers across one surface, and the stone feels surprisingly smooth, as though the sculptors worked with tools sharper than bronze, tools that left a finish beyond what should have been possible. Researchers still argue how artisans of the 10th century managed such precision with the technology available. The air is scented with warm dust and a faint sweetness, almost like dried lotus petals. The temple seems to glow from within, its sandstone catching every thread of moonlight. You pause before a carving of Shiva dancing in a cosmic circle, his limbs stretching in balance, his expression caught somewhere between joy and destruction. The longer you look, the more you feel movement, as though the stone is pulsing in time with your heartbeat. Deeper inside, you pass lintels carved with stories from Hindu epics, Ravana shaking Mount Kailash, Indra riding Airavata, Vishnu calming the ocean of milk. Each scene is so precise, so layered, that you lose yourself in the detail. At one corner, you notice something odd, a face that seems slightly different, less divine and more human. Was it a playful craftsman leaving his own portrait among the gods, or a trick of weather and erosion? You lean closer, but the face refuses to settle into clarity, blurring between man and myth. The silence here feels lighter than in the larger Angkor temples. Birds stir faintly in the branches beyond, and the rustle of small animals punctuates the night. Yet even so, there is an intimacy to the space, as though it is aware of your presence. You imagine the artisans working centuries ago, bent close to the stone, carving with patience and devotion. Perhaps they whispered to the stone as they worked, secrets only it would remember. You step into a narrow chamber where moonlight filters through a small gap in the ceiling. Dust floats in the beam like drifting stars, slow and weightless. Time stretches here, each second dissolving into the next. You place your hand on the wall, and for a moment you almost feel the vibration of a chisel, faint as memory, as though someone is still working just beyond sight. A shadow flickers at the corner of your eye. You turn quickly, expecting to see an animal, but the space stands empty. Only the carvings remain, their stone figures frozen mid-gesture. Yet one carving seems to hold its gaze on you more firmly than before, a guardian figure with wide, round eyes. You smile faintly, shaking off the sensation, but you cannot deny that the temple seems to watch. As you wander back toward the courtyard, the red sandstone glows brighter under the moon, almost fiery, though the night remains cool. You notice a carving of a lotus flower at the base of a wall. Its petals are perfect, symmetrical, yet the center contains a tiny spiral. It echoes the spiral you traced earlier at Knossos, as though these ruins, separated by seas and centuries, are quietly connected through symbols. You pause, letting the thought linger before moving on. The courtyard opens wide. From here, the temple looks like a jewel box, small but endlessly intricate. You inhale deeply, the air rich with earth and faint herbs, and exhale slowly. The temple seems to soften in that moment, its stones less like ruins and more like an eternal memory, delicate yet unbroken. You turn toward the tree line, the glow of Bantei Shrey fading into shadow behind you. Ahead lies more silence, more secrets, another step along the endless path of ruins waiting in the dark. The path narrows, lined with roots that twist across the ground like restless serpents. The air thickens, damp and heavy, with the scent of moss and wet bark. You push gently past low branches, and the forest suddenly gives way to a clearing where silence reigns so absolute it almost hums in your ears. Before you rises Beng Mealea, the jungle temple. Unlike Bante Shrey's jewel-like precision, Beng Mealea feels chaotic, raw, almost violent in its beauty. The temple is shattered, its stones tossed about as if by some colossal hand, yet still arranged in a shape that breathes purpose. Vines cascade down the walls like curtains, roots claw through doorways, and trees rise boldly through what was once the center of shrines. The ruins are alive, stone and forest locked in an embrace neither seems eager to break. You step onto a fallen block, its surface damp, slick beneath your feet. The smell here is rich, almost intoxicating. Wet earth, decayed leaves, and a faint mineral tang rising from cracks where rainwater lingers. You move cautiously, listening. The jungle is strangely quiet, the usual chorus of insects and frogs subdued. Only the occasional drip of water echoes through the space. You pass through a corridor where walls lean precariously inward, held up more by stubbornness than strength. The carvings here are faint, smoothed by centuries of weather, but you can still make out fragments. Celestial dancers, mythic beasts, half-legible patterns. You run your hand across one, feeling grooves that refuse to fully vanish. Researchers still argue whether this temple was once as grand as Angkor Wat itself, or merely a shadow of it, a prototype, perhaps even a forgotten rival. A shaft of moonlight pierces the canopy and lands squarely on a massive lintel stone carved with a churning ocean scene. Figures battle waves, some swimming, others reaching upward as though pleading. It seems oddly dramatic compared to other temples' calmer reliefs. You pause, squinting, and notice one figure whose eyes seem unusually wide, even fearful. For a second, you wonder if the artist left behind a warning, a detail intended to unsettle. A sudden silence spreads deeper into the temple. The jungle's stillness feels sharper here, like breath held too long. You glance sideways and notice a doorway filled entirely with tangled roots. Yet through the gaps, faint light glimmers, not moonlight, but something dim and golden. You lean closer, but the glow fades, leaving only darkness, perhaps a trick of your eyes, perhaps not. You continue along a pile of collapsed stone blocks, balancing carefully. Each step stirs faint echoes, low thuds that disappear quickly into the thick air. At the far end of the chamber, you find a carved naga, its stone body broken in places, its head tilted strangely as though observing your movement. You smile faintly, remembering the naga bridge from before, and wonder if this is coincidence or another thread binding these ruins together. The temple opens into a courtyard where trees rise through what was once a gallery roof. Moonlight streams in unevenly, creating pools of silver light broken by shadow. You pause, letting the quiet sink into you. There is something both unsettling and calming here, a tension that lingers but never quite breaks. You crouch beside a pool of water caught in a stone basin. The surface reflects not only the trees above, but also the faint outlines of the temple walls. Yet, in the reflection, one wall seems whole, unbroken, standing tall as it must have centuries ago. You blink, and the image dissolves, leaving only jagged ruins mirrored in the ripples. For a moment, though, it felt as if time had peeled back, just slightly, just enough to remind you of what was lost. The longer you linger, the more the ruins seem to shift. Angles tilt in ways that don't quite add up. A doorway appears narrower when you approach, wider when you step back. Perhaps it is the vines, the shadows, the uneven ground. But you cannot shake the feeling that Bengmealea resists being fully understood, preferring to remain mysterious, unfinished, untamed. As you step back into the tree line, you glance over your shoulder. The temple sits heavy and silent, vines swaying lightly in the breeze. Somewhere within, you imagine a stone still holds the glow you thought you saw earlier. Perhaps it was nothing. Or perhaps Bang keeps certain lights for those who choose to stay longer than they should. The forest path pulls you onward again, carrying the scent of damp earth with you, a reminder of how silence can be both unsettling and comforting when it holds you close. The path stretches forward, drier now, with patches of moonlight slipping through the trees as if the forest is slowly opening again. You feel a shift in the air, less heavy with dampness, carrying instead a faint mineral bite that reminds you of carved stone kept long under the sun. The ground hardens beneath your feet, and before long, the trees part to reveal a broad causeway. Its edges are lined with stone balustrades shaped like serpents. This is a Naga bridge, one of Angkor's ceremonial gateways between realms. The bridge is massive, wider than a city street, its stones worn smooth by countless feet that once crossed here. On either side, colossal Nagas stretch out, their seven-headed forms coiling in frozen motion. Their jaws gape open, teeth bared, tongues curling like stone flames. Even in silence, they seem alive, their eyes catching stray glints of moonlight. You step onto the bridge, and immediately the air feels different, charged like the threshold between two worlds. Your footsteps echo faintly, though there is no roof to contain the sound. The stone beneath you feels cooler than the air, smooth under your palms when you trail your hand along the Naga's body. The texture is surprisingly fine, almost polished, despite centuries of weather. You notice patches of moss clinging like scales, soft against the hardness of stone. Halfway across, you pause. The Nagas' bodies undulate along the balustrades, carved to suggest movement, as though they are still slithering forward. It creates the uncanny illusion that the entire bridge is in motion, ferrying you not across space, but into a different layer of time. Researchers still argue whether these Naga bridges were purely symbolic or whether they marked precise cosmological alignments, gateways between the mortal world and the divine. The silence deepens here, more pronounced than in the jungle of Bang Mealea. The only sound is the faint rustle of leaves stirred by night air. You glance toward the far end of the bridge, where the ruins of a gateway loom, framed by shadow. For a moment, the passage seems impossibly far away, as though the bridge stretches longer the further you walk. You smile softly at the trick, but your pace slows all the same. You pass one Naga head up close, its stone eyes round and wide. Its mouth is open, teeth worn but still sharp in shape, and you notice faint traces of pigment in the crevices, red, blue, perhaps even gold. Once, these creatures were not pale stone, but vivid, painted protectors, glaring in full color. The thought unsettles and delights you. Imagine crossing here centuries ago, under the blazing sun, with serpents gleaming in hues brighter than life. You reach out and press your palm lightly to the Naga's head. The stone is cool and damp, but for a second, it feels as though something pulses beneath it, faint as a heartbeat. You withdraw your hand quickly, glancing back down the bridge. Shadows cluster thick near the base, but nothing stirs. The tension fades quickly, softened by the sheer calm of the night air. Further along, one Naga is broken, its head lying sideways on the ground. Cracks split through the face, yet even toppled, it seems watchful. You crouch briefly, brushing your fingers across its features. Its eyes are intact, unblinking, You wonder if they were carved to watch forever, whether upright or fallen. A playful thought slips through your mind that the Naga might be mildly annoyed about the whole situation, like a guard who lost his post but refuses to stop doing his job. The air shifts again as you near the far side. A faint smell rises, dried grass mixed with old stone, sharper and less humid than the forest scents behind you. The gateway looms closer now, massive towers framing the end of the bridge. Moonlight outlines their edges, revealing faces faintly carved into the stone. Serene, smiling, distant, echoes of the many-faced towers you saw before at Bayan. You glance back one last time. The bridge glows pale in the moonlight, the Nagas stretching endlessly into the dark, as if ready to ferry more unseen travelers. You notice one detail you missed before: small circular holes carved along the Naga's back, evenly spaced, perhaps once used to anchor decorative poles or maybe something else. Their purpose is unknown, another small mystery etched into stone and left without explanation. You step through the gateway. The bridge falls silent behind you, the Nagas holding their endless vigil. Ahead lies another temple, another story, waiting in the quiet night, ready to draw you deeper into the maze of time. The path beyond the Naga bridge leads into heavier forest again, but the air feels drier, less swampy. The moon rides high above the canopy, spilling broken light over the ground as you push forward. The silence here is different. No insects, no calls of night birds, only the occasional groan of branches swaying in the wind. It feels as though the jungle itself is holding its breath. After nearly an hour, the trees thin and the earth rises slightly. The smell changes, less of moss, more of dry leaves and baked stone. Then it appears before you, Prasat Tam, the towering pyramid of Ko-Ker. The structure rises abruptly out of the jungle, massive and stark, its terraces stacked one above another until the peak cuts against the night sky. Unlike Angkor's sprawling temple complexes, Ko-Ker is raw, angular, almost brutal in form. The pyramid looms with straight sides, stone blocks piled in precise tiers. You pause at the base, staring upward. In the pale moonlight, it looks less like a temple and more like a fortress, an ancient citadel prepared to withstand centuries. The silence deepens further here, as though sound itself is not permitted near the steps. You approach the base and run your fingers along the lowest stones. They are rougher than those of Angkor Wat, less polished, but the blocks are immense, set with exactness that should not be possible without modern machinery. Ko-Ker was built in the 10th century, during a brief period when the Khmer capital moved away from Angkor, and some researchers believe this pyramid was modeled after stepped sanctuaries of older, more distant civilizations. Standing here, you feel that theory settle heavily in your chest. The structure carries an alien geometry, both familiar and out of place in Cambodia's jungles. You place your hand on the first step. The stone is cool, though the night is warm. Climbing begins slowly, each step wide, higher than your knee, forcing your body into awkward, deliberate motion. The steps are not designed for comfort. They are designed for ritual. The climb itself feels like a test, a slow ascent towards something above human scale. Midway up, you pause and turn back. The jungle spreads endlessly, a dark carpet broken only by faint glimmers of moonlight on leaves. From here, the forest looks endless, swallowing the horizon in all directions. No villages, no fires, no lights, just wilderness pressing up against the pyramid's base, like waves against stone. You feel utterly alone, as though you have stepped outside the present into an older world where only this temple and the forest exist. Continuing upward, your breath grows heavier. The steps seem to stretch higher than they should. Each terrace reveals another, and then another, stacked above. You notice weeds sprouting between cracks, their roots gripping tightly into stone. Some steps are crumbling, forcing you to tread carefully. Yet the pyramid stands, defiant against time, its silhouette unbroken even by centuries of weather and abandonment. Finally, you reach the top platform. The space opens wide, flat, bare stone under the open sky. At the center stands a single pedestal, long empty. Once, this held a colossal lingam, a sacred pillar symbolizing divine power. Records suggest it may have been among the largest ever built, nearly 5 meters tall, glistening when sunlight struck its polished surface. But now the pedestal is bare, the lingam vanished, stolen or destroyed. Only the void remains, more powerful in absence than presence. You step closer, circling the pedestal. The stone here feels different, as though more carefully worked. Faint channels run along the base, perhaps to drain rainwater, perhaps for something else. The edges are sharp, unsoftened by erosion. It feels almost new, though it has been here for over 1,000 years. Standing at the center, you lift your gaze. The sky stretches wide, stars burning hard and bright above. From this height, you can see beyond the jungle, a faint shimmer of hills in the distance, the horizon clear and sharp. The wind moves steadily across the platform, carrying with it a strange resonance, like whispers woven through air. Legends say Kokare was abandoned abruptly, its glory short-lived, its rulers erased from inscriptions. Some believe the pyramid itself holds the key to why. Standing atop it, you feel the weight of that mystery. Why build such a massive monument in isolation, only to abandon it within decades? The silence offers no answer, but the stones press against you with the certainty that something happened here, something vast, unsettling, and forgotten. You walk slowly to the edges of the top terrace. Looking down, the drop is sheer, the pyramid's sides falling away in hard lines. The jungle pools below like a dark ocean, pressing at the base but never climbing higher, as though held back by invisible force. You notice a detail at each corner, faint carvings etched into stone, weathered, almost invisible. Geometric shapes, interlocking, resembling neither Khmer script nor decorative flourishes. Their origin is uncertain, and many who have seen them argue whether they are intentional at all. Yet standing here, the lines feel deliberate, like markers placed for someone to read from above. The wind grows colder at the top, brushing against your skin. You close your eyes briefly, listening. A low hum seems to rise, not from the jungle, not from the sky, but from the stones themselves. It is faint, steady, as though the pyramid remembers its purpose and hums it quietly into the night. You exhale slowly, steadying yourself. The pedestal remains silent, the stars above unblinking. Kokure stands patient, timeless, its questions unanswered. And you, standing alone at its summit, feel both the awe and unease of being allowed to witness it. The climb down from Kokure is slow, each step heavy, and you feel as though the pyramid is reluctant to release you. By the time you reach the forest floor again, the air feels warmer, thicker, and the jungle seems to close in quickly, erasing the pyramid from sight as though it had never been there. You walk onward, guided by faint starlight filtering through the canopy, until the ground beneath your feet begins to tilt upward again. The scent shifts from damp moss to sharp rock and dry soil. Soon, the trees thin, and the earth drops sharply at one side. You have reached the escarpment that holds Preah Vihear, the mountaintop temple perched high along the edge of the Dangrek Range. The air is cooler here, winds rushing across the cliffs with steady force. You pause at the base of the long stairway that climbs to the sanctuary. The stairs stretch upward like a narrow stone river, carved into the slope, vanishing into the darkness above. You place a foot on the first step, and the stone feels smoother than Kokher's. These stairs were meant not to strain, but to lead pilgrims gently upward, drawing them higher through layers of sacred space. With each terrace you ascend, the air grows lighter, the horizon opening wider. Below, the forest fades into shadow, while above, the temple's silhouette sharpens against the star-filled sky. At the first platform, you notice guardian lions carved in stone, their features worn but still commanding. One stares directly outward, its gaze fixed on the jungle far below. The other seems slightly turned, as though watching you specifically. You move past them quietly, the wind carrying a hollow whistle through the trees. Preah Vihear's architecture is unlike Angkor's, long, axial, almost like a pathway stretched along the ridge rather than a compact sanctuary. Each level leads you deeper, through gopuras, courtyards, and causeways, all aligned to draw the visitor toward the innermost shrine. Yet here at night, the sequence feels less like progression and more like slipping into layers of silence. Each doorway narrows the sound further until all you hear is the scrape of your own steps. Researchers still argue that Preah Vihear's placement atop the cliff was both strategic and symbolic. Militarily, it commands the landscape for miles, a vantage point impossible to overrun. Spiritually, its height brings worshippers closer to the sky, above the forest, where winds move unhindered. Some even suggest it was built to align with celestial events, its long causeway channeling light at solstices. You drift along the main axis, fingers brushing sandstone blocks. The stone is cool, though the wind has dried it. The carvings here are detailed. Celestial dancers, gods riding mounts, endless floral patterns curling across lintels. Some remain sharp despite centuries of weather. Others fade into faint outlines, as though memory itself has thinned them. You pause at one relief of Shiva, standing firm, a trident in his hand. His eyes, though worn, seem to follow you in the moonlight. The wind grows stronger the farther you go, funneled through open doorways. It carries with it the faint scent of dry grass from the cliffs, mixed with dust from the stones. You hear a low rumble, distant thunder perhaps, or maybe just the shifting air moving across deep valleys below. For a moment, it sounds like chanting, faint and rhythmic, lost as quickly as it comes. You step out onto a platform that juts directly over the cliff. The drop below is dizzying, sheer rock falling hundreds of meters, the jungle canopy stretching endlessly beyond. The stars shimmer above, mirrored faintly in rivers winding across the plain. Standing here, it feels as though the temple itself is less anchored to the earth and more suspended between sky and void. Legends speak of offerings made here, not just of flowers or incense, but of entire processions ascending the mountain to leave gifts at the sanctuary's heart. Some inscriptions describe kings and generals making vows before war, seeking divine favor. Yet the temple's history is tangled in conflict. Even in recent times, its location along contested borders has sparked disputes. Its stones hold not just sacred devotion, but also centuries of struggle. You step back into the inner causeway. The floor stones are cracked in places, shifted by earthquakes and rain, but the alignment holds. The straight line continues forward, pulling you deeper until you reach the final sanctuary. Its towers rise not with grandeur, but with austere grace, the carvings more restrained. Here, less is decoration, more is silence. Inside, the air is still. Dust lies on the floor, disturbed only by your steps. The chamber is empty now, but once it held sacred images, offerings, flickering lamps. The walls close in tight, and the wind falls away, leaving only a deep quiet. You run your hand along the central pedestal, smoother than the rest, worn down by centuries of touch. It radiates a faint chill, not from air, but from something deeper in the stone. You stand still for a while, listening. No whispers, no birds, no thunder, just the weight of the temple itself, pressing inward. Time feels unstable here, as if the centuries fold together. You can almost see flickers of processions moving along the causeway, hear footsteps and chants rising, catch a glimpse of smoke curling toward the sky. Then the images dissolve, leaving only the cold stone beneath your hand. When you step back out, the stars above seem sharper, closer, as though the temple has lifted you nearer to them. The wind rushes again, loud and insistent, sweeping past walls and stairways. On the far side of the courtyard, a carving catches your eye. A serpent coiled tightly, its body winding across the lintel in complex knots. At its center, a small mark, too deliberate to be erosion, glints in the moonlight. Was it a symbol meant for alignment, or just a stonemason's flourish? Researchers still argue that detail, its purpose lost to time. You linger one last moment at the cliff's edge. The jungle below lies silent, endless, and the temple stands watch above it, eternal in its perch between earth and sky. Then, with the wind at your back, you turn slowly away, leaving Preah Vihear to its solitude. You follow the wind down from the cliffs of Preah Vihear, your steps softened by the long descent through shadowed paths. The jungle returns quickly, wrapping you once more in damp air and the earthy scent of soil after nightfall. But as you continue, the trees shift, broader leaves, heavier vines, and a different rhythm in the night calls. By the time the ground levels, the atmosphere carries the thick humidity of central Vietnam. A faint mist clings to the air, carrying with it the smell of riverbanks and faint wood smoke. Ahead, scattered in the forest, you glimpse brick towers rising from the darkness like glowing embers caught in the moonlight. You have reached my sun, the ancient Hindu sanctuary of the Cham civilization. Unlike the sandstone giants of Angkor, these temples are built of reddish bricks, their surfaces baked hard, fitted without visible mortar. Time has worn them down, many crumbled or broken, yet the ones that remain rise with an uncanny resilience. Their silhouettes in the night look like sentinels left behind, keeping watch over the valley. You step closer, to the first tower. The bricks radiate warmth even now, long after the sun has gone. Your fingers brush their surface, expecting roughness, but the texture is surprisingly smooth, as though polished by countless hands. Researchers still argue how the Cham builders bonded the bricks so perfectly. Some suggest plant resins. Others believe a chemical process lost to history. Standing here, you suspect the answer remains sealed in the very bricks themselves, their silence defying centuries of study. The carvings on these towers are distinct from the Khmer style. Shiva, Parvati, and other deities appear in high relief, their forms slender, fluid, almost alive in motion. At one lintel, a figure dances in frozen rhythm, arms extended, face calm yet fierce. The play of shadows makes the limbs seem to shift when you move past, as though the dance continues whenever you aren't looking. You wander deeper into the sanctuary. The layout feels less rigid than Angkor's, more intimate, as though each tower had grown organically from the valley floor. The night air carries the scent of damp vegetation, and somewhere nearby, water trickles faintly, perhaps a stream weaving past the ruins. Fireflies hover between towers, their glow pulsing softly, like tiny lamps lit in reverence. In the heart of my sun, you stop at a cluster of half-collapsed temples. Broken walls lean against each other, forming strange angles. Some stones are scarred, not by time, but by something more abrupt. Bomb craters still mark the ground, reminders that this sacred place once became a battlefield. The silence here feels heavier, layered with both reverence and sorrow. And yet, the surviving towers endure. One particularly tall sanctuary still holds its chamber intact. You step inside. The air shifts immediately, cooler, enclosed, the smell of age thicker. The chamber is narrow, its brick walls climbing high toward a small square opening above, through which a sliver of moonlight pours. It falls directly onto the pedestal at the center, illuminating it with a soft glow. Once, a lingam or sacred image would have stood here. Now, only the base remains, but the light turns it almost silver. You rest your hand on the pedestal. The stone is cold, sharply contrasting the warm bricks. For a moment, you feel the quiet rhythm of centuries, the rise and fall of the Cham kingdom, the ceremonies, the abandonment, the rediscovery. Time blurs until the silence feels alive, humming faintly as though the bricks themselves remember the chants once spoken here. Outside, a breeze stirs through the valley. The sound is different, less like wind through trees, more like faint voices weaving together. You pause, listening. It rises, fades, then returns, as though carried by unseen currents. Researchers still argue whether my sun was chosen for its acoustics, the valley's bowl-like shape amplifying sound in mysterious ways. Standing here, the possibility feels tangible. Even a whisper could ripple outward, carried across towers and echoed back. As you walk along the broken pathways, you notice a detail carved into one surviving tower. Rows of small figures arranged in tiers, each one different, no two alike. Some look like warriors, others like dancers, others almost monstrous. Their eyes seem deep, shadowed, too dark for moonlight to reveal. You lean closer, but the details shift slightly, as though the figures resist being seen all at once. You step back, unsettled, and the carvings settle into stillness again. The mist grows thicker as night deepens. It curls low, hugging the ground, softening the outlines of the ruins. The towers seem to float above it, detached from earth, drifting like islands in fog. The effect is dreamlike, blurring the border between waking and memory. You recall the serpent carved at Preah Vihear, its strange glinting mark, and wonder whether some hidden link threads through all these sanctuaries, a pattern unnoticed except when seen at night. The valley holds you in stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a lone night bird calls, sharp against the quiet, then falls silent. You exhale, the sound swallowed by the mist. My sun endures around you, not in grandeur, but in persistence. The red brick towers, standing as quiet witnesses to a civilization long vanished, their mysteries baked into every block. The mist of my sun fades slowly, and with each step you take, the air grows thinner, drier, until the heaviness of the jungle disappears entirely. The ground beneath your feet hardens, shifting from damp earth to packed soil, then to stone that radiates faint warmth even under the night sky. When you lift your head, the forest canopy is gone, replaced by a vast plateau stretching out endlessly, its edges broken only by the silhouettes of massive pyramids rising against the stars. You have arrived at Teotihuacan, the ancient city of the gods. The silence here is immense, not the quiet of nature, but the kind of stillness that feels constructed, as though the city itself demands it. The avenue of the dead stretches before you, a straight, wide path cutting through the ruins, leading toward the looming shape of the Temple of the Moon at the northern end. The pyramid rises stark and symmetrical, its stone steps climbing high into the sky. Moonlight spills across its tiers, turning the edges silver, while shadows deepen in the recesses. You step slowly onto the avenue, the stones beneath your feet uneven, worn smooth by countless footsteps long vanished. Every sound you make echoes faintly, swallowed by the vastness around you. Moving closer, you notice how the pyramid seems to shift in size. From a distance, it looked large but comprehensible. Up close, it becomes monumental, its mass overwhelming. You crane your neck, and still the summit seems impossibly far. At the base, the air feels cooler, the shadow of the pyramid cutting across your body like a veil. You place your hand on one of the steps. The stone is coarse, rough against your skin, carrying the dry heat of the plateau. Climbing begins with slow effort, each step shallow but endless. The incline forces your breathing into rhythm, each exhale matching the press of stone beneath your palms as you pull yourself higher. Halfway up, you pause. Below, the avenue of the dead stretches long and straight, lined with smaller platforms and temples. To the south, you can see the great bulk of the Pyramid of the Sun, massive even at this distance, glowing faintly under the stars. The city's geometry reveals itself, precise, deliberate, aligned with something far larger than human scale. Researchers still argue why Teotihuacan was built in such alignment. Some say it was meant to mirror celestial constellations, others that it mapped sacred geography. A few suggest the city's layout encodes measurements of time itself. Standing here, looking down the avenue, the alignment feels undeniable, as though the stones have captured the rhythm of the sky. You continue upward until you reach the top platform of the Temple of the Moon. The summit is flat, open, with a small central structure that once held offerings and sacred fires. The wind rushes strongly here, sweeping across the plateau, carrying with it the dry scent of dust and faint minerals. From this height, you can see mountains encircling the valley. One, directly to the north, mirrors the pyramid itself, its slopes rising steeply, its peak sharp against the stars. The builders clearly noticed the resemblance, placing the temple deliberately to echo the mountain, blending human construction with natural form. At the summit, you stand still, feeling the night expand around you. The city below lies quiet, but you can almost imagine it alive. Thousands of people moving along the avenue, incense drifting from temples, drums pounding in rhythm, firelight dancing across painted walls. The echo of that life lingers in the stones, an imprint impossible to erase. You step closer to the edge and look down. The pyramid steps fall away steeply, each one sharp, exact, intimidating. The drop feels more vertical than it truly is, as though the pyramid resists letting your eyes settle on it. In the plaza below, moonlight reveals faint outlines of smaller structures, many half buried, others eroded into low mounds. Archaeologists have uncovered tunnels beneath these platforms, passages filled with offerings of obsidian blades, carved shells, and even pools of liquid mercury. Theories swirl endlessly about their purpose: ritual underworlds, symbolic rivers, or something else entirely. The wind grows colder, sharper. You hear a faint flutter, like wings, but when you glance around, nothing moves. Only the stars above flicker, countless and bright. For a moment, the city feels suspended in time, its ruins not broken, but waiting, as though the rituals could resume, if only the right moment arrived. You kneel by the top platform's edge and run your fingers over the stones. Some are weathered, chipped, but others retain a strange smoothness, as if shaped differently. You notice flecks of mica embedded in the walls, glinting faintly in the moonlight. Ancient builders placed mica sheets within certain structures here, though no one fully understands why. Some suggest insulation, others symbolic reflection, but the effect is clear. Under the stars, the pyramid itself glimmers with a faint, shifting light, as though alive. You exhale slowly, letting the plateau's vast silence wash over you. Somewhere far down the avenue, a shadow seems to move briefly, then vanish. You wait, but nothing stirs again. Only the dry wind remains, whistling low through the stones. Standing atop the Temple of the Moon, you feel both the enormity of human ambition and the deep void of what remains unknown. The city that once held power over thousands now lies deserted, its name forgotten, its builders anonymous. And yet, the geometry, the alignment, the sheer force of its presence endure. Teotihuacan waits, patient, eternal, its mysteries sealed in stone. The plateau of Teotihuacan fades behind you, the avenue of the dead dissolving into shadow, as if the city never existed. The air shifts, warmth creeps back in, heavier, carrying with it the faint salt of distant seas. You step forward, and the sound of insects rises, layered with the distant rhythm of water striking stone. The jungle closes around you once more, but this is not the damp green of Southeast Asia. This forest feels thicker, drier, alive with unseen movement. Then the trees part, and before you towers the pyramid of El Castello, the temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. It rises sharply from the earth, its sides perfectly stepped, its summit crowned by a small temple chamber. Moonlight spills down its flanks, sharpening each stair into alternating stripes of light and shadow. Even in stillness, the structure feels as though it is moving, pulsing with some hidden rhythm. You step closer, the ground beneath your feet flattened and cleared, the plaza wide, open, and eerily quiet. The pyramid dominates everything here, its symmetry so exact it pulls your eyes upward whether you intend it or not. Researchers still argue how the Maya achieved such precision. 365 steps, one for each day of the solar year, aligned with celestial events so precisely that during equinoxes, a shadow serpent slithers down its side. You place your palm against the lowest stone. It is warm, radiating the heat it stored from the day's sun. The surface is smoother than you expect, the edges clean, deliberate. You climb slowly, each step narrow but steep, the angle forcing you to lean forward. The higher you go, the more the plaza below shrinks, the jungle pressing at its edges like a dark ocean. Halfway up, you pause. The night insects have fallen silent. A low hum replaces them, not from the jungle, but from the stone itself. You press your ear close and hear it faintly, like air moving through a hollow space deep inside. The pyramid is not solid. Tunnels and chambers lie hidden within. Archaeologists have found cenotes, sacred wells, and caverns beneath this site, suggesting the temple was built directly above natural openings in the earth. Was it coincidence or deliberate design to link the heavens above with the underworld below? You continue climbing until you reach the summit. The small temple chamber greets you with its narrow doorway, shadows thick within. You step inside. The air cools instantly, thick with the scent of stone and something metallic, almost like rust. The walls close tightly, their surfaces plain compared to the grandeur outside. Yet you feel watched here, as though the chamber remembers every ritual, every offering, every echo of voices raised within it. Standing in the center, you look out through the doorway. From this height, the surrounding jungle stretches endlessly, a vast, breathing expanse. The stars above burn bright, and the wind carries faint hints of the sea. The alignment becomes clear. The pyramid is not just structure, but calendar, compass, and theater, all woven into stone. You recall the serpent you saw at Preah Vihear, the shifting figures at My Sun, the mica shimmer at Teotihuacan. Here, the serpent is no carving. It is shadow itself, descending in motion at certain times of the year. The builders designed not just a monument, but a performance of time played out by the sun and earth. The realization chills you and yet steadies you. As you linger, you notice faint patterns etched along the stones inside the chamber, symbols nearly invisible, eroded by centuries. They resemble serpents, yes, but also spirals, stars, and what might be eyes. Researchers still argue whether these marks were intentional guides for priests or simply the play of erosion. Standing here in silence, you suspect they are both. Natural decay and human intention layered into one. The wind rises suddenly, rushing through the doorway, swirling around you. For a moment, it sounds like distant hissing, a serpent's breath coiled through air. Then it softens, fading back into the quiet hum of night. You step slowly out onto the summit platform again. Looking down, the pyramid's steep sides fall sharply away, merging with the wide plaza below. At one corner, you glimpse another structure, the ball court, the largest of its kind, where ritual games ended with outcomes far heavier than sport. Beyond it, faint outlines of temples press through the jungle, reminders that Chichen Itza was once a city of thousands. Now, only the stones remain, carrying mysteries of a people whose calculations of time and sky rivaled anything known today. The night deepens, the stars glimmer harder, and you exhale slowly. The journey has carried you from jungles to cliffs, deserts to valleys, across oceans and centuries. Each sight remains vivid in your memory. The hum of Ko-Ker's pyramid, the cliff winds of Preah Vihear, the mist of my sun, the shimmering mica of Teotihuacan, and now the shadow serpent of Chichen Itza coils quietly at your feet. You close your eyes. The silence presses close, the pyramid standing firm beneath you, patient as stone, eternal as time. The night settles around you, soft and deep, carrying the echoes of all the places you have visited. Ko-Ker's towering pyramid, Preah Vihear's cliffside temple, my son's red brick towers, Teotihuacan's glimmering stones, and Chichen Itza's shadow serpent. They linger not just in space, but in your mind, like faint heartbeats of civilizations that once thrived. You feel the pull of time loosening, centuries blending together, the distinctions between past and present dissolving gently as you exhale. The air shifts around you, carrying the subtle sense of earth, stone, and faint incense that might exist only in memory. The wind moves in gentle currents, tracing across the ruins, lifting a leaf here, stirring a dust mote there, reminding you that these places are alive in small, quiet ways even now. You let your gaze drift upward to the stars, where constellations have watched humanity for millennia, silent witnesses to every ceremony, every whispered prayer, every story etched into stone. You feel your own presence soften, blending with the night, invisible among invisible observers before you. There is a calm in knowing that the ruins endure, patient, and that the mysteries they hold need not be fully solved to be appreciated. The unanswered questions, the serpent marks, the shimmering mica, the vanished lingams, linger like faint music at the edges of awareness, soothing rather than troubling, inviting curiosity instead of urgency. The pathways you walked, the temples you touched, the shadows you noticed, they fade slowly in your mind, not abruptly, but like a river folding back into itself. You feel weightless, carried by gentle memory through the corridors of history, across continents and cultures, all joined by stone, ritual, and the quiet pulse of human intention. As the night deepens, the images soften. The ruins become outlines, the wind becomes a hum, and you feel your breath matching the rhythm of centuries. Every structure you visited remains patient and eternal, while you drift gently into a calm, restful stillness. End of script. Sweet dreams.